The hatpin. At first glance, it's a useful accessory. But this thin metal rod was also a Victorian woman's secret weapon, a self-defense against assault. We're getting straight to the point today on WickWired. On a quiet New York street, a young woman walked alone. A perverse young man, known as a masher, tried to touch her. Here's what happened. With one swift stroke, women asserted their independence. They would no longer be an object for a man's pleasure. Why did women wear a 12-inch steel rod in their hair? By 1901, women's hats became impressive works of art, topped with ribbons, flowers, feathers, and even fake fruit. As the decorations got bigger, the hats got heavier, and women needed hatpins to hold them in place. Thanks to the Industrial Revolution, America's cities grew, and women took jobs in factories, department stores, and offices. To get to work, women rode streetcars, and this is where mashers felt the boldest. Take the story of Leonie Blaker, a Kansas tourist in New York City. In 1903, Blaker boarded a Fifth Avenue stagecoach. When the coach hit a bump, the elderly man next to her moved closer, up against her hip. He lifted his arm and draped it across her back. Leonie reached for her foot-long hatpin and plunged it into the man's arm. He screamed and left the coach at the next stop. The masher often went unpunished. Many women were too humiliated to appear in court, where they would have to discuss vulgar matters in front of an all-male jury. But this wasn't the case in Omaha, Nebraska. In 1913, the city fined mashers for every name they called a lady. $10 for honey bunch, $15 for turtle dove, $20 for baby doll, and $25 for little cutie. In cities like Chicago, mashers fought back. In March 1910, the Chicago City Council debated a proposal that would shorten hatpins to 9 inches. A woman with a longer hatpin would be fined $50, about $1,200 today. The men and women who packed City Hall began a fierce debate. If women care to wear carrots and roosters on their heads, that is a matter for their own concern. But when it comes to wearing swords, they must be stopped.
If the men of Chicago want to take the hatpins away from us, let them make the streets safe. No man has the right to tell me how I shall dress and what I shall wear.
The all-male city council passed the ordinance. Milwaukee, Pittsburgh, and Kansas City all passed similar laws, and with these new laws in place, hatpins got smaller. But this didn't stop women from defending themselves. After World War I, the uproar over hatpins died down, as bobbed hair and smaller hats came into fashion. As the 1920s dawned, a new social menace emerged, the flapper. In the 21st century, America is realizing that the masher never went away. Thanks to the silence breakers and the Me Too movement, today's mashers are being exposed. Women may no longer use hatpins, but their determination is just as sharp.
Never go walking out without your hatpin, not even to some very classy joints. So when a fella sees you've got a hatpin, He's very much more apt to get the point.